Welcome back to our extended coverage tonight of the coastal crisis. This is the image from the live camera 5,000 feet underwater, where BP's Deepwater Horizon well is gushing oil still into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, we appreciate you joining us for the 1-hour edition tonight of WLOX News at 6, focusing on the coastal crisis. Shrimp season, everybody wondering about what the status of that is. Dr. William Walker of DMR, good enough to join us tonight. Doctor, do you have any sense of if things are going to go as planned with shrimp season inside coastal waters?
We hope so, Jeff. Right now, everything is open in Mississippi. Fishing, shrimp season is scheduled to open about the second week in June when the shrimp reach the right size, and we intend to do that. We are taking samples and having those samples analyzed for any kind of material that might be detrimental to humans or other to eat the shrimp. We're not finding any of that as yet. The health department has declared Mississippi seafood is safe to eat. We're also looking at our oysters. We think the oil will pass, if it comes in here, will pass over those oysters and not affect them, and we'll be fine for the opening of oyster season next year. So we're trying to remain optimistic about this and hope for the best, but as we and the governor have said many times before, we're doing the best to prepare for the worst.
All right, thank you. Dr. Walker or Dr. Carron, either of you gentlemen who might want to take this next question. It comes from Tanya Coley-Shonowitz here on the coast. She asked, why are they just now testing the dispersant chemicals? Dr. Carron?
I think I can take a shot at this. From what I've read, the chemical has been approved by the EPA already, so it's been used quite a bit before. I think this is a new use of it, though, injecting it in very deep water, and the quantity is really high. So I think they're beginning to rethink it, because I think originally they thought the issue would be over with by now. So I think this is just a safety thing to go ahead and look at what's happening and to make sure that what it's doing is not worse than the oil itself. And I think it's a legitimate thing, a legitimate question that the EPA and the federal and state agencies are doing.
Captain Pullen, just reading today that there is a serious concern because the EPA says they don't know the long-term effects of this dispersant.
Well, I think certainly anytime you put something in the marine environment, you have to be concerned about it, but Dr. Carron's right. There is an approval process in place. The dispersant that's being used did go through that approval process and was approved for use. It's a fairly rigorous review. And he's also right that we've never used it in this quantity, and certainly have never used it subsurface to this depth. But it's being effective. We're seeing great effect with the subsea injection of the dispersant, and because of that, we're going to be able to limit some of the use on the surface to minimize some of the impact on the environment.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think our concern isn't so much along the Mississippi Gulf Coast with this right now, but what's actually happening in the deep Gulf of Mexico with this dispersant, what it's causing the dispersed oil to do. There's some indication that there are large areas in the deep part of the Gulf that have pools of a mix of oil and water dispersed. Some of that looks like it's been picked up by the Gulf Stream part that's called the loop current that could take that towards the Keys. And we don't really know where all this stuff is. And I think that's the big concern of most of the environmentalists now, is that there are a lot of unknown questions. I've seen some of the movies that were being played on ABC News tonight before we came on that showed a lot of the stuff under the surface. It's not coming to the surface, and I think that's a big question that we're all going to find out about.
Absolutely. Anybody on the panel who wants to take this, at this point, do we have any sense of how much oil is, as the doctor said, under the surface? Any idea at all?
Well, the National Incident Commander has convened a flow rate task force, and one of the things that that task force is looking into is what is the oil budget. And the oil budget is simply how much was released into the environment, how much was collected out of the environment, and how much may be still in the water column, and we don't know the results of that yet. But I can tell you that our efforts at the wellhead, skimming on the surface, we've done some very novel things like burning the oil on site, have been tremendously effective, and I think are, in addition to the currents that Dr. Carron mentioned, I think are one of the reasons why we haven't suffered any impact in Mississippi to this point.
Jeff, one of the points they made at the Robert Command Center last Friday when I visited was that one of the things that complicates it is that it is not consistent coming out of the wellhead. Sometimes it's more oil than gas, sometimes it's more gas than oil. So you can imagine over that 30-day period, it's going to create a great deal of uncertainty as to how much actually has come out.
I'd also like to add, if I could, to what the captain said, and that is what he and I agreed on from day one, is that we're going to mount a response that can meet whatever flow rate that well is capable of delivering. And what we're doing now, since it's been 4 weeks plus into the incident, is we're doing lots of surveillance. So we understand the magnitude of the spill, we know what's coming at us, and how to respond to that effectively.
All right. Let's take another question. This comes from Robert Compton. I think we've kind of addressed this already, but he asks, is the seafood caught from the Gulf and Back Bay safe to eat? Will the shrimp this upcoming season be safe to eat? At what point will local seafood be unsafe to eat, if indeed that happens? Dr. Walker or Dr. Carron?
Well, I'll take a shot at that, Jeff. As I said before, we feel like everything that comes out of Mississippi waters is safe to eat. Right now, we're looking at that. We're sampling tissue. We're analyzing that tissue. If we get any indication that there's anything wrong with any of the seafood products of Mississippi, we'll certainly take appropriate action to protect the people who live and visit on the coast. But until that happens, if it ever does, we're open for business, and we appreciate you eating the seafood while you're here.
Another question somewhat related. This is from Louise Moran, who asks, what about the oysters? Is it true that it will take about 2 decades to clean and restock the oyster reefs, if it can be done at all?
Well, we're back to, our oyster reefs were completely destroyed in Katrina, and we're back to about 85% of what we were before Katrina. Oysters recover, unless they're killed, they recover pretty quickly. They will absorb material into their tissues, and then they'll cleanse that material when the outside conditions clean up. So we're not going to be harvesting any Mississippi oysters till later in the summer, when the season is scheduled to open, and at that time we anticipate that they'll be fine.
All right, Doctor, thank you. This question to BP and Keith, how often, this is from one of our viewers, how often are the fishermen and others affected by the oil going to receive checks from BP?
Well, I can say as long as they're impacted, they will. We have a claims process that we've established. There's 3 ways to get your information into a claim. You essentially can go on the internet, you can call, or you can go into one of the local outreach centers we have along the coastal counties, and individuals bring proper documentation, and they're going to get their claim filled based on their impact. So I would say it's going to be, as long as they're having impact, we're going to respond to that.
We keep hearing over and over again that BP will pay all, quote, legitimate claims. That is so open-ended, though. How do you determine what's legitimate and what isn't?
Yeah, well, I think the easiest thing to do is provide the proper documentation. So for the citizens that are impacted, the business owners, it's really not that difficult. If you have any, whether it be tax forms or any other kind of bills of sale that you have over a period of a few years, maybe a few months, we haven't been, overly confrontational there. As a matter of fact, we've already paid out over $27 million in claims. We've not denied one claim, and we actually have several cases that are just waiting for proper documentation. So the process is working, and we continue to add more response capabilities so we can get those claims managed as quickly as possible.
All right, we need to take another break. When we come back, more of your questions about the coastal crisis and its impact right here in South Mississippi. Stay tuned.